Came home early and found my wife with another man in our kitchen. The DNA test I ran that week shattered everything I believed about my family. I left the results on the table and disappeared for 10 years. They used my name to build their futures. Now I'm back to take it all away. My name is Francis Morgan. I'm 43 years old and I'm a financial auditor for pharmaceutical companies. I spent 20 years building a reputation on being thorough, on catching details other people missed. Funny how I missed the biggest lie of my life happening right under my nose. It was a Tuesday morning in October when everything shattered. I was supposed to be in Atlanta for a 3-day compliance review. Had my bags packed. Kissed Amber goodbye at 5:30 while she was still in her bathrobe. Hair wrapped in that purple towel she always used. I kissed each of the kids on the forehead before heading out. Benjamin barely grunted. Paige was already texting someone. Liam pulled away like I'd burned him. Got 2 hours down I-75 when my phone rang. The VP's assistant, breathless and apologetic. The review was postponed. Some regulatory issue that needed sorting first. Rescheduled for next month. I pulled off at the next exit, grabbed coffee, and turned around. I didn't call ahead. Why would I? This was my house. I came into the garage like always, took my shoes off by the laundry room door. The house smelled like bacon and coffee. Amber's Tuesday morning ritual. I could hear music playing upstairs, one of those pop stations Paige liked. Everything seemed normal. Then I walked into the kitchen. There were 2 coffee mugs on the counter, 2 plates with bacon grease still shining on them. And standing at the sink washing dishes with his back to me was a man I recognized immediately. Dylan Hayes, my old college buddy. The guy who'd been my best man at my wedding. The guy who'd crashed on our couch for 3 months after his divorce, 5 years ago, because he needed time to get back on his feet. He was wearing my gray University of Michigan t-shirt. Before I could process that, Amber walked in from the hallway. Her hair was down now, still damp. She was wearing Dylan's flannel shirt. I recognized it from the camping trip we'd all taken last summer. The one where Dylan had insisted on coming along because he needed guy time. She saw me and froze. Her face went white, then red, then white again. Dylan turned around, dish soap still on his hands. He didn't look surprised. He looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted something important. Francis, Amber said. Just my name once, flat. I stood there for maybe 5 seconds. Felt like 5 hours. I counted the tiles on the backsplash behind Dylan's head. 12 across. Noticed the coffee maker was still on. Noticed my wedding ring felt tight suddenly. Conference got canceled, I heard myself say. My voice sounded like it was coming from someone else's throat. Dylan set down the dish he was holding. Listen, man. I turned and walked out. Didn't run. Didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. Just walked back through the laundry room, slipped my shoes on and left through the garage. Got in my car, started the engine, drove. I ended up at a rest stop 40 miles north, sitting in my car while semi-trucks roared past. That's when I remembered something Amber had said years ago. Back when Benjamin was a baby. We'd been looking at photos, comparing features. She laughed and said, "Good thing they all look like you, Francis. Otherwise people might get suspicious." At the time, I'd laughed too. Thought she was joking about genetics being weird sometimes. Now, sitting in that rest stop parking lot with my hands shaking on the steering wheel, I pulled out my phone and searched for private DNA testing labs. Found one that specialized in paternity cases, one that didn't ask questions if you paid in cash. I drove straight there. The lab technician didn't ask questions. That's what you pay for when you go to places like this. Discretion wrapped in clinical efficiency. I handed over 3 toothbrushes. I collected from the upstairs bathroom that afternoon, while Amber was at her volunteer shift and the kids were at school. Blue for Benjamin, pink for Paige, green for Liam. I added hair from Liam's brush and a few nail clippings I found in Paige's bathroom trash. The technician, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a chain, labeled everything with numbers instead of names. Results in 2 weeks, she said. We'll call the number you provided. I paid cash, walked out, drove to a motel off Route 23, and checked in under a fake name. Spent 2 weeks there telling Amber I'd been reassigned to an extended audit in Michigan. She didn't question it. Why would she? I'd been the dependable one for 20 years. The envelope arrived at the motel on a Wednesday. Plain white, no return address, just a barcode in the corner. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for an hour before opening it. Watched people come and go, businessmen with roller bags, a family with 2 small kids, an old couple holding hands. Then I tore it open. 3 tests, 3 results. 0 biological matches. Benjamin, no relation. Paige, no relation. Liam, no relation. I read each page twice. 3 times. The words didn't change. The numbers didn't shift. Cold. Clinical. Absolute. I folded the papers, slid them back into the envelope, sealed it with tape to keep it pristine. Then I drove home. It was early morning when I pulled into the driveway. The house was dark except for the porch light Amber always left on for me. I used my key, stepped inside, took off my shoes like I always did. Everything looked the same. Family photos on the wall, kids' school schedules on the refrigerator, the couch where we'd watch movies together. All of it was a lie. I walked to the kitchen table and set the envelope down, centered it perfectly. No note, no explanation, just the truth in a sealed package. I looked around one last time at the coffee maker I bought Amber for her birthday, at the drawing Liam had made in 2nd grade, still magneted to the fridge, at the key holder by the door with all our names carved into it. Then I walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped into the cold November fog. I left the DNA results on that table and vanished. I didn't take my car, left it in the driveway with the keys inside. Didn't take my wallet, my phone, my clothes. Just walked to the main road and caught a Greyhound bus heading west with cash. I'd withdrawn over the past 2 weeks. 10 years later I would return, but not as the man who left. The cabin I found was 40 miles from the nearest town, buried in the woods off a logging road that didn't appear on any map. The man who owned it, a grizzled old-timer named Harold, didn't care about names or background checks. He cared about 3 things. Cash up front, no noise, and no trouble. I gave him all 3. The place was rough. 1 room with a wood stove, a sink that ran brown for the first 5 minutes, and windows that rattled when the wind picked up. But it was mine. No memories, no photos, no lies. I spent the first month just chopping wood, waking up at dawn, splitting logs until my hands bled, stacking them against the side of the cabin. Physical work kept my mind from spiraling. Every swing of the axe was another thought I didn't have to think. By winter, I'd built a routine. Up before sunrise, coffee from a dented percolator, check the traps I'd set for rabbits, chop more wood, read books I bought at thrift stores in town, westerns mostly, stories about men who disappeared into the frontier and never looked back. I took odd jobs for cash, roofing jobs in summer, snow removal in winter, fixed a barn for a rancher 20 miles east. He paid me $200 and didn't ask my name. That's how I liked it. Nobody in Montana cared who you were or where you came from. They cared if you showed up on time and did the work. I showed up. I did the work. I kept my mouth shut. At night, I'd sit by the wood stove and think about Benjamin, Paige, and Liam. Wondered if they'd opened the envelope. Wondered if Amber told them the truth or spun it into another lie. Wondered if they missed me at all or if my absence just confirmed what they already knew. That I didn't belong. Sometimes I'd pull out the shoebox I kept under the floorboards. Inside were printouts I'd made before I left. Public records, social media posts, newspaper clippings. I'd hike into town once every few months. Used the library computer for an hour and searched for their names. Benjamin made honor roll his senior year. Paige got into 3 colleges. Liam won some soccer tournament. And Amber, she played the victim perfectly. Posted photos with captions about resilience and single motherhood. People commented with hearts and prayers. Nobody asked where I'd gone. Nobody seemed to care. I was fine. Let her have her story. I was building mine. By year 3, I wasn't the same man who'd walked away. I'd lost 30 pounds, gained muscle from the physical labor. My hair went gray at the temples. I grew a beard. If someone showed me a photo from my old life, I wouldn't recognize myself. And that was the point. It was late spring, year 4, when I met Lucy. I'd gone into town for supplies. Flour, coffee, batteries, and was loading bags into my truck when I heard shouting from the house. Across the street. A man's voice, loud and mean. Then a girl's voice, younger, pleading. I looked up through the front window. I could see a man, thick arms, red face, grabbing a little girl by the wrist. She couldn't have been more than 8. He yanked her toward the hallway and she stumbled. I should have walked away, should have minded my business, but something in me snapped. I crossed the street, walked up the porch steps, and knocked hard. The door opened. The man stood there breathing heavily, smelling like whiskey at 2 in the afternoon. "What, heard shouting?" I said. My voice was calm, flat. "Everything all right?" His eyes narrowed. "None of your business." Behind him, I saw the girl peeking around the corner. She had a bruise on her cheek that looked a few days old. "I'm making it my business," I said. He stepped forward, chest out, trying to intimidate me. But I'd spent 4 years splitting logs and hauling lumber. I didn't move. "You need to leave," he said. I looked past him at the girl. "You okay, sweetheart?" She nodded, but her eyes said different. I looked back at the man. "I see another bruise on her. We're going to have a problem." He slammed the door in my face. I went back to my truck, sat there for 10 minutes, then drove to the sheriff's office, filed a report. They said they'd look into it. I didn't believe them, but it was something. 2 weeks later, I saw the girl again. She was sitting on the curb outside the general store alone, holding a torn backpack. I walked over, crouched down. "You remember me?" I asked. She nodded. "What's your name?" "Lucy. Where's your dad, Lucy?" She shrugged. "He left. Went to Billings, said he'd be back tomorrow." I looked around. No adults, no supervision, just a kid sitting on a curb at dusk. "You got somewhere safe to stay tonight?" She shook her head. I made a decision right there. "Come on, I'll get you something to eat." That night, Lucy slept on the couch in my cabin while I sat in a chair by the door with a hunting rifle across my lap. If her father came looking, I'd be ready. He never came. Lucy stayed with me for 3 months before the system caught up. A social worker named Mrs. Patterson knocked on my door one afternoon. Clipboard in hand, questions ready. "Are you Francis Morgan?" she asked. I'd been using the name Frank Mason for years. "No, ma'am." "Frank Mason," she frowned. "We have a report that a minor, Lucy Henderson, has been residing here. Is that correct?" Lucy was inside doing homework at the small table I'd set up for her. She started calling me Frank like it was the most natural thing in the world. She gained weight, looked healthier, smiled more. She needed help, I said. Her father was hurting her. Mrs. Patterson softened a little. "I understand, but there are proper channels. You can't just take in a child without going through the system. The system was going to put her in foster care. That's the protocol, Mr. Mason, for her safety." I looked back through the doorway at Lucy. She was watching us, fear creeping back into her eyes, the same fear I'd seen that first day. "What if I want to foster her?" I asked. "Officially," Mrs. Patterson blinked. "That would require background checks, home inspections, training courses. It's a lengthy process. I'll do it." And I did. Spent the next year jumping through hoops. Background checks came back clean. Frank Mason had no criminal record because Frank Mason didn't exist before 5 years ago. I'd built the identity carefully. Legal documents purchased through channels I'd learned about from other men living off the grid. The home inspection was harder. They wanted to see stability, permanence. I renovated the cabin, added a proper bedroom for Lucy, fixed the plumbing, insulated the walls, took out a loan under my false name using cash I'd saved as collateral. By the time Lucy turned 9, I was her official foster parent. She called me Dad one morning over breakfast, just said it casually like she'd been thinking it for a while. "Dad, can you help me with my math homework?" I froze, coffee cup halfway to my mouth. That word. I hadn't heard it in years. Not from Benjamin, Paige, or Liam. They'd stopped calling me Dad long before I left. "Sure thing, sweetheart," I said. Lucy smiled and went back to her cereal. That night, I pulled out the shoebox from under the floorboards, looked at the old photos of my former life. Benjamin at his high school graduation, Paige at some college event, Liam holding a soccer trophy. They'd all moved on. Benjamin was in business school now. According to the last article I found, following in his father's footsteps, the article said, except his father was Dylan Hayes, not me. I closed the box and shoved it back under the floor. That life was over. This was my life now. Lucy was my daughter now. Not by blood, but by choice. And that meant more than blood ever had. But I still remembered, still kept track, still waited, because eventually I'd go back. Not for them, for me. Year 7 changed everything. I'd been keeping my money in cash buried in jars behind the cabin. $60,000, saved from 7 years of manual labor and living like a monk. But cash doesn't grow. It just sits there waiting to rot. I started reading finance books from the library, online articles about investing. I remembered my old life, my skills as a financial auditor. I'd spent 20 years analyzing companies, understanding market trends, spotting opportunities. I opened an investment account under Frank Mason's name. Started small, put $5,000 into index funds, watched it grow, added more. Then I got bold. Cryptocurrency was exploding. Bitcoin, Ethereum, names I'd never heard of a few years ago. I researched for months, read white papers, studied the technology. It was risky, volatile, but the potential was enormous. I invested $20,000 into Bitcoin when it was trading at $3,000 per coin. Lucy asked me one night why I was always on the computer. Work stuff, I told her. Trying to build something for us. She hugged me. You already built something, Dad, this. She gestured around the cabin. She was right, but I wanted more for her. College, security, a future that didn't depend on me swinging a hammer until my back gave out. By year 9, my investment had grown to over $400,000. Bitcoin had surged. I diversified into real estate crowdfunding, tech startups, dividend stocks. The manual laborer from Montana was now wealthier than the financial auditor from Michigan had ever been. I started planning my return. It started with a simple search. Benjamin Morgan scholarship application, found it on the university website. He was applying for a family legacy scholarship at my old alma mater. The scholarship I'd endowed anonymously years ago before everything fell apart. The application listed his mother, Amber Morgan, as his guardian. Listed me, Francis Morgan, as his father. Claimed the legacy status through my name, my donations, my history. They were using me still. After 10 years, I read Paige's application next. Same thing. Then Liam's. All 3 of them applying for scholarships under my name, under my legacy, while Amber collected sympathy and Dylan Hayes played father figure. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Not a happy smile, a cold one. They thought I was gone. Thought I disappeared forever. Thought they could build their lives on the ruins of mine. They were wrong. I picked up my phone and started making calls. First to a lawyer in Boston who specialized in identity restoration, then to a private investigator who could dig up everything about Dylan Hayes, then to my old university asking about alumni engagement opportunities. I'd like to make a donation. I told the development office, a significant one, and I'd like to discuss joining the Scholarship Advisory Board. They practically fell over themselves saying yes. 10 years ago, I'd left DNA results and vanished. And in 2 weeks, they'd start to understand. The meeting room in Wallace Hall was sterile. White walls, fluorescent lights, a long table with uncomfortable chairs. I'd chosen it specifically for that reason. No warmth, no comfort, just cold administrative efficiency. I arrived early, sat with my laptop, arranged the files in front of me. 3 folders, 3 names, 3 lies I was about to upend. Dean Merritt arrived next. He was a tired-looking man in his 60s, more bureaucrat than educator. Frank, thanks for organizing this. I know these legacy reviews can be sensitive. Just doing my job, I said. Amber arrived exactly on time. She walked in wearing a navy blazer, heels clicking on the tile floor, projecting confidence. Benjamin followed, then Paige, then Liam. All of them dressed like they were going to a job interview. None of them looked at me. Why would they? I was just another administrator. Please sit down, Dean Merritt said, gesturing to the chairs across from us. They sat. Amber smoothed her skirt, folded her hands on the table. We're happy to clarify any questions about the scholarship applications. All documentation should be in order. I stayed quiet. Let the dean handle the opening. Mrs. Morgan, I'm afraid there's been an issue. With the legacy verification process, Mr. Mason here has flagged your children's applications for additional review. Amber's eyes flicked to me for the first time. Polite professional, I see. May I ask what the issue is? I spoke then, my voice calm and level. The issue, Mrs. Morgan, is that your children are claiming legacy status through Francis Morgan, but the scholarship committee has determined that this claim cannot be verified. Benjamin leaned forward. What do you mean can't be verified? My father went to this school. His name is on the donor wall. We have every right. Your father, I interrupted, would need to confirm that relationship, and Francis Morgan has not been available to do so. Paige's eyes narrowed. Because he abandoned us 10 years ago. You can't penalize us for that. I'm not penalizing anyone, I said. I'm ensuring that scholarship funds go to legitimate legacy students. Students whose family connections can be properly documented. Amber's voice sharpened. This is outrageous. We've submitted birth certificates, school records, everything you asked for. Except DNA verification, I said quietly. The room went silent. Liam looked confused. DNA, why would we need? Because, I said, opening the top folder. Legacy status requires biological connection to the donor, and there are questions about whether that connection exists. Amber went pale, not white, but gray, like someone had drained the blood from her face. Benjamin's jaw clenched. This is insulting. Who are you to question? I'm a scholarship director, I said, and I take my responsibilities seriously. Dean Merritt shifted uncomfortably. Frank, perhaps we should discuss. That's when the door opened. I'd arranged this part carefully. A courier entered carrying a sealed envelope. He walked directly to Amber and handed it to her. Amber Morgan, he asked. She nodded, speechless. You've been served, he left. The envelope sat on the table between us like a live grenade. What is this? Amber whispered. Open it, I said. She did. Her hands shook as she pulled out the papers inside. I watched her eyes scan the first page, then the second. Watched the moment she realized what she was reading. DNA test results. 10 years old, 3 children, 0 biological matches to Frances Morgan. Where did you get this? She breathed. I leaned forward, looked her directly in the eyes. I kept copies. Frances Morgan left the originals on your kitchen table 10 years ago. Then he vanished, but now he's returned. I let the words hang in the air. Benjamin grabbed the papers from his mother's hands, read them. His face went from confusion to shock to rage in seconds. Paige stared at me. Who are you? I stood up slowly, buttoned my jacket. Someone who's very good at spotting fraud. Your legacy claims are denied. All 3 of you will be reviewed under standard admissions. No preferential treatment, no family connections. I picked up my laptop, walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back. Mrs. Morgan, I said, tell Dylan Hayes I said hello. I left them sitting there, the truth finally catching up to the lies. The room exploded with noise. Benjamin shot to his feet. Paige started shouting questions. Liam looked like he might be sick, but I kept my eyes on Amber. She knew. Had always known. And now everyone else knew too. You're lying, Benjamin said, his voice shaking. This is some kind of sick joke. Sit down, Benjamin, I said. My voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Or should I call you by your real father's name? Dylan Hayes' son. He froze. Paige went pale. Liam looked at his mother with something between horror and betrayal. How did you? Amber's voice broke. She tried again. Frances died. You disappeared. You can't be. I didn't die, I said. I left because I found out that none of these children were mine. That you'd been lying to me for 18 years. That Dylan Hayes, my best friend, was their real father. Dean Merritt looked between us, clearly out of his depth. Perhaps we should. No, I said firmly. They need to hear this, all of it. I pulled out more documents. Financial records showing how Amber had drained our joint accounts after I left. How she claimed, I abandoned the family while secretly meeting with Dylan regularly. How she'd built a career on sympathy while living off my name. You used me, I said to Amber. Used my reputation. My donations, my legacy to benefit children who weren't mine. Children who knew the truth and treated me like garbage because of it. We didn't know, Paige shouted. Mom never told us. I pulled out my phone, opened an old screenshot I'd saved years ago. A text conversation between Paige and a friend from when she was, 15 turned the screen so everyone could see. A courier entered carrying a sealed envelope. He walked directly to Amber and handed it to her. Amber Morgan, he asked. She nodded, speechless. You've been served, he left. The envelope sat on the table between us like a live grenade. What is this? Amber whispered. Open it, I said. She did. Her hands shook as she pulled out the papers inside. I watched her eyes scan the first page, then the second. Watched the moment she realized what she was reading. DNA test results. 10 years old, 3 children, 0 biological matches to Frances Morgan. Where did you get this? She breathed. I leaned forward, looked her directly in the eyes. I kept copies. Frances Morgan left the originals on your kitchen table 10 years ago. Then he vanished, but now he's returned. I let the words hang in the air. Benjamin grabbed the papers from his mother's hands, read them. His face went from confusion to shock to rage in seconds. Paige stared at me. Who are you? I stood up slowly, buttoned my jacket. Someone who's very good at spotting fraud. Your legacy claims are denied. All three of you will be reviewed under standard admissions. No preferential treatment, no family connections. I picked up my laptop, walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back. Mrs. Morgan, I said, tell Dylan Hayes I said hello. I left them sitting there, the truth finally catching up to the lies. The room exploded with noise. Benjamin shot to his feet. Paige started shouting questions. Liam looked like he might be sick, but I kept my eyes on Amber. She knew. Had always known. And now everyone else knew too. You're lying, Benjamin said, his voice shaking. This is some kind of sick joke. Sit down, Benjamin, I said. My voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Or should I call you by your real father's name? Dylan Hayes' son. He froze. Paige went pale. Liam looked at his mother with something between horror and betrayal. How did you? Amber's voice broke. She tried again. Francis died. You disappeared. You can't be. I didn't die, I said. I left because I found out that none of these children were mine. That you'd been lying to me for 18 years. That Dylan Hayes, my best friend, was their real father. Dean Merritt looked between us, clearly out of his depth. Perhaps we should. No, I said firmly. They need to hear this, all of it. I pulled out more documents. Financial records showing how Amber had drained our joint accounts after I left. How she claimed, I abandoned the family while secretly meeting with Dylan regularly. How she'd built a career on sympathy while living off my name. You used me, I said to Amber. Used my reputation. My donations, my legacy to benefit children who weren't mine. Children who knew the truth and treated me like garbage because of it. We didn't know, Paige shouted. Mom never told us. I pulled out my phone, opened an old screenshot I'd saved years ago. A text conversation between Paige and a friend from when she was, 15 turned the screen so everyone could see. Maybe one day I'll be half the man you are, Benjamin. I folded the letter, put it in a drawer. Maybe I'd respond someday. Maybe not. Dylan Hayes lost his construction business 6 months after the truth came out. Turns out when people find out you destroyed your best friend's life, they don't want to hire you. He filed for bankruptcy within a year. Amber moved to Arizona. Last I heard, she was working retail. The nonprofit fired her when the scandal broke. Paige dropped out of college. Got a job as a paralegal. Sent me a message once through the university. I'm sorry. I never responded. Liam joined the military. Maybe he'd find himself there. Maybe not. As for me, I stayed in Montana. Built my consulting business. Helped Lucy get through high school. Applied to be her legal father, not just foster parent. The judge approved it. On her 18th birthday, we changed her last name legally. Lucy Mason, my daughter, in every way that mattered. She asked me once if I regretted going back. If the revenge was worth it. It wasn't about revenge, I told her. It was about truth. They built their lives on lies. I just made sure the foundation collapsed. And now, she asked, now I built something real. 10 years ago, I left DNA results and vanished. I returned not to destroy, but to reclaim what was stolen, my name, my dignity, my truth. And in the process, I found something better than revenge. I found peace.